Welcome to Blind, Vision Impaired, and Deafblind Experiences and Resources. I'm Jennifer Adowitz, Research Associate with the National Research and Training Center on Blindness and Low Vision. I'm also visually impaired and have been legally blind since birth. As I was growing up, I went from using large print books in school to magnification. And then as my vision got worse, transitioned to reading Braille and using auditory means. I didn't have any vision professionals helping me in school. I worked with the regular ed classroom teachers, but not only can I speak from my personal experiences, but professionally, I did receive a master's degree as a teacher of the visually impaired to work with school-age children, and certification as a vision rehabilitation therapist working with adults. And in my work, I've had the chance to work with a number of students and families and young adults. So I've been witness to understanding how early intervention can have such a tremendous impact. I'm happy to be with you today. Kendra?
My name is Kendra Farrow, and I work with Jennifer at the National Research and Training Center on Blindness and Low Vision, which is located at Mississippi State University. I have had limited vision for my entire life. As a child, I had a lot of usable vision and did most tasks visually. I had a teacher of the vision impaired who worked with me when I was in school, but I did not receive orientation and mobility services until I was in my 20s, and at that point my vision had deteriorated. About 10 years ago, I lost hearing in one of my ears, and my vision has continued to deteriorate. I am a vision rehabilitation therapist, and I worked for 14 years serving individuals of all ages who were blind and vision impaired.
Hi, everyone. I'm Toni Hollingsworth. I work at the University of Southern Mississippi, where I run a federal grant called Mississippi Hearing Vision Project. This is a grant that occurs in every single state, and we are able to support children and families and all educators of any child having hearing and vision, both hearing and vision loss, from birth to 21. My background is as a teacher of the deaf, teacher of the visually impaired, and also with specialized instruction in deaf blindness, both adults and children. I am so happy to share time with you today, and we look forward to sharing our experiences and our knowledge with you.
Our objectives for today's session: name 2 implications resulting from blindness, vision impairment, and deaf blindness. Name 2 effective instructional strategies for individuals who are blind, vision impaired, or deafblind. Identify 2 other professionals to engage for effective teaming. Discuss 2 environmental considerations that facilitate learning. As we consider blindness and vision impairment, it's important to note that there is a spectrum where the vision can progressively get worse across this spectrum. So there's different levels of functioning. At the one end, we have the typical vision 20/20 on the eye chart, and the acuity or the sharpness of vision can deteriorate across that spectrum all the way to the point where the individual cannot see the eye chart, but yet they can still see some shapes, some movement. Maybe they can just see light versus dark. They can see outlines of maybe windows when it's daylight outside versus the inside kind of light. And then they may have just the light perception, be able to tell that there is light versus no light at all. So there's this whole spectrum of functioning.
One important thing to note when you're working with children is that they often don't comprehend that the way their vision works is different from everyone else around them. And I know this was true for myself, and no one around me made a big deal about the fact that I didn't see the same way as everyone else. In fact, it went all the way until I was in second grade before I remember having a distinct moment of understanding where I knew that I saw differently than everyone else. It was kind of a funny situation where a student in my class got in trouble for talking, and the teacher made them move their desk right up against the front of the room where the blackboard was. And the thought in my head as I saw this happen was, that student is so lucky, now they can see what's on the blackboard. And so, and then it occurred to me, just as the following thought is, wait, it's just my eyes that work that way. Everyone else can see it from back further away from the blackboard. So, you know, it takes time for children to process and to understand that their vision is functioning differently than those around them. One other thing to talk about here on this slide is that some vision impairment is anatomical, meaning that the vision difficulty stems from an actual functional thing that's happening within the eye, some kind of deformity or something that didn't develop correctly within the eye itself. And then there is the brain-based vision impairment, where the eye is functioning properly, but the brain does not fully interpret the images and the information that's being sent from the eye to the brain. This brain-based vision impairment is typically called CVI, and is the most common type of vision impairment that is that's diagnosed right now among young children. There are differences based on when a vision impairment or blindness occurs in an individual's life. When we talk about a congenital impairment, we are looking at the impairment beginning before the age of 2. And when we talk about an adventitious or an acquired impairment, it happens after or age 2 or later in the individual's life. And the reason this is an important distinction is that those individuals who have had typical vision before the age of up to the age of 2 may have some visual memories or some incidental learning, which we'll talk about later, that just helps to build their concept of space and the world around them. And it is a building block that they have an advantage over someone who has no memory of that visual world to rely on. And the same can be said for hearing impairment, and we're going to talk about the combination of both vision and hearing impairment, also known as deaf blindness. And you know, when these impairments onset, so sometimes a child may be born blind and then acquire a hearing impairment later on, or they may start as being deaf and acquire the vision impairment later on in life, or they may happen simultaneously. So all of these factors impact the incidental learning and how the child is able to acquire the concepts of language when we're talking about the hearing impairment, or the concepts of the visual world, space, and how space relates to the person and the world around them.
In the next 2 slides, you will see a simulation of both hearing and vision impairment. This first slide has more severe vision and hearing impairment, while the second slide has just a little more acuity and slightly more hearing. How did this experience make you feel? Did your stress level increase? Imagine the level of fatigue you might have from trying to see and hear to interact with your environment. What challenges do you think you would face in participating?
Children who are called deafblind are singled out in our educational law because impairments of sight and hearing require thoughtful and unique educational approaches in order to ensure that children having this disability have the opportunity to reach their full potential. A unique educational approach that you can see in the picture on the screen is that the teacher is using what's called a hand under hand with the student to provide instruction. Deafblindness is a disability of access, and access to visual and auditory information about people and things in the environment. Some Mississippi stats for this last school year were provided by the State Department of Education. And as you can see on the screen, I have the number of 261 identified as visually impaired this past year on their IEPs. Also, we have 629 hearing impaired students. But for those who were coded as deafblind, there were only 6 on the IEP coded as being deafblind. So what this indicates is not only that deafblindness is the lowest incident of all low incidence disabilities. That means less frequently occurring disabilities. But it also could be because those students who are deafblind are only coded as visually impaired or only coded as hearing impaired, or they could be coded as multiple disabilities because 90% of the children who are deafblind may have one or more additional disabilities or health problems. And so they might be coded for that instead of the deafblindness. In these cases, then, the hearing and vision loss may not at all be recognized or addressed.
When we think about the impact on learning that vision loss and deafblindness have, it's really all about access to information. Information about the world that can be taken in through many channels. For people who are vision impaired or blind, in terms of communication, understanding and being able to, well, just identify nonverbal communication can be a challenge. Facial expressions, gestures, perceptions, and concepts can be influenced by a lack of vision. Concrete concepts are going to be much easier to understand than more abstract concepts. So, for example, the idea of your big sister being your older sister and not your taller sister. Social and emotional development and skills can be affected. Learning when it's time to take turns, moving from a more egocentric approach to actually, being and showing interest in others and interacting with others. Motivation and self-confidence. Yeah. How does it feel if whenever there's a game with balls, you're always the one that drops the ball because it's hard to see? It can have an effect on both motivation and self-confidence. Motor skills, sensory integration, orientation and mobility, so moving around in the environment, knowing what's in the environment, the relationship between time and space or location of activities can all be affected. And there's an increased need for organizational skills.
For deafblindness, implications for learning, the two greatest implications are communication and mobility, of course. Without access to learn to communicate or access to receive clear information through accommodations and specialized, individualized instruction, children who are deafblind will often express themselves in ways that serve them best, but may not be in ways society is familiar with, causing the children to be misunderstood and deemed to have behaviors. Therefore, when working with children who are deafblind, it is important to remember that communication must often be taught. And once that occurs, behaviors are observed to decrease, which leads to strengthened positive relationships, increased social skills, and literacy skills. Studies have shown that movement while learning is beneficial because it improves concentration, relieving stress, and increasing retention. But children who have both vision and hearing loss might not feel comfortable, might be afraid to move around in space when they cannot see or hear what's nearby them. So again, instructional strategies and specialists are needed to support them. Truths about vision and hearing senses. So access is our job. If a child cannot see the information, cannot see what people's faces look like when they are communicating, or if the child cannot hear, to access information such as the teacher having her back to the student while writing on the board, etc. Our job is to provide the access.
Because I have hearing in just one ear, one thing that I notice that happens very frequently because of not having visual information is that I can't tell where sounds are coming from. So even though I hear that there's a sound, I don't know whether it's in front of me or behind me or to my right or to my left. And I often find myself facing in the wrong direction.
I'm sure that maybe at times could be frustrating too.
Absolutely. Right? And for a child that doesn't have the concepts that are built up about, locating the sounds, I think it's even more complicated.
So that's a great example that even a mild hearing loss can have a serious impact. So the one thing that we know about hearing and vision as senses is that they're distance senses, meaning you can take in a great deal of information while remaining stationary. You can see, you know, at a distance, somebody walking towards you, or you can hear, you know, someone maybe driving nearby you. You know, the sense is giving you not only just a whole picture, but also detail all at once. And when you have either of those compromised, then of course you don't get that information. It's also an impact upon your motivation to move and to engage. And since we learn through our movement and exploration, the sound and vision entices us typically to interact with something. That becomes decreased if you cannot see or hear it, the item. And I'm thinking about toys, for example. If we hear a toy, but we can't see it, it might still entice us to reach out and try to find that noise to interact with it. We should also take special time and just note that balance is affected when vision is taken away. And hearing loss may also cause balance issues. In fact, you tend to have a higher chance that you will experience falls if you have a hearing loss. And for some hearing losses, you may even have a total absence of the parts of the ear related to vision, to balance.
Balance is definitely a huge challenge with both the vision and the hearing loss. I know I've developed vertigo since I had the hearing loss, and just my sense of space is very different than it was when I had full hearing.
Yes, I can tell another story too, that one of my students kept bumping into other teenagers, you know, when they were to be in lines or going into cafeterias or into any of the other rooms at the high school. And the other students thought my student was really rude, just being rude, not understanding that many times it was about the balance issue. And she was trying to keep her balance, but instead bumping into her fellow students, which then also impacts upon the social relationships that she had with her friends or other students, because they weren't being very friendly to her because she was bumping into them. They thought that she was being mean or just cutting in line, or, you know.
All right, well, let's talk about how we typically learn. So the picture on the slide shows that the majority of what kids learn is through what we call incidental learning, or through watching and observing. And just some examples of this. One of our colleagues had a student once ask, you know, how many feet does a duck have? How many legs does a duck have? Because they didn't know. You know, you talk about a duck's feet, but then how many legs does a duck have? If you think about yourself, how did you learn to peel a banana? Did you talk about it in class in school and have a presentation on it? Did you have someone give direct instruction? Or did you just observe and imitate that action? For myself, I know for the longest time, I had no idea how to blow bubbles with bubble gum. And I know it's kind of hard to see what's happening inside somebody's mouth with the gum, but in my mind, I wasn't even sure. I couldn't even tell that the gum was totally inside their mouth. I thought maybe they stretched it across the outside of their mouth and then blew through it to make a bubble. So there's a lot of basic concepts that need to be taught and directly taught that other children pick up through incidental learning.
This next slide demonstrates how incidental learning is a lot less of a primary mode of getting information for a child who is blind. So we have the direct learning now, we've flipped the image around so that the direct learning has the most amount of time that is needed to gather that information. And then the secondary learning requires hearing to be able to have even secondary learning. So the primary learning is going to be the direct learning for our students who are blind.
And for teaching a student who is deafblind, you're going to focus even more on that direct hands-on experience, because you might not have reliable hearing as well. And certainly, vision will be unreliable if you have vision at all, to be able to get information in. So the majority of instruction will be direct, hands-on experience.
So when we talk about ways to encourage and support learning, it's important to, as a professional, to encourage and help families be able to give X's and O's, lots of X's and O's. And that doesn't just mean hugs and kisses, although that's a very important part to stress with families too. But for the X's, this involves exposure, experiences, exploration, and expectations. So in terms of exposure, it's exposing the child to many different items, many different situations. For experiences, giving them lots of different experiences. Again, those concrete examples, even common everyday tasks, folding laundry, cleaning tasks, putting away the dishes. Those are all really helpful experiences for someone to have, and exposure to those items and situations as well. It's important to have the family encourage their child to explore through movement, just presenting items to them. Exploring helps the child identify what the item is. It can help them understand how it works, how the parts fit together to make a whole, and even understand about its functioning so that they can understand language related to its use. But exploration should be safe. And there are safe ways to explore. I've had some sighted people kind of freak out, don't touch that, you're going to hurt yourself. But there are safe ways to explore. I know now, when I'm drying dishes, if the towel is between my hand and the blade of the knife, I can safely explore that knife. So there's sometimes just be mindful that, you want to have your kids safely explore, but don't get super freaked out. Help them find those safe ways. But also appropriate exploration is important too, especially as kids get older. I've had elementary school kids come into my office and just automatically start touching everything on the desk. And of course, this is their way of finding out what's there. And a lot of times people will give them a pass. That's just Susie's way of figuring out what's there. But there are social norms and socially appropriate behaviors. And so it's important to help introduce those to kids so that they're able to explore in the proper context. And I think about the movie A Miracle Worker, when Helen Keller is at the dinner table with her family and just grabbing things and doing whatever she wants. And the family's just letting her until Annie Sullivan works with her to develop more socially appropriate behavior. In terms of expectations, this also relates because, when we give kids a pass because they're blind and they can do certain things or get away with things, sometimes what are our expectations? It's good to have high expectations, and that doesn't mean that every child is going to have a PhD or run a Fortune 500 company, but have expectations that they'll be happy, that they'll be fulfilled, that they'll be successful, that they'll be able to contribute to their community. In my family, I have two sisters who are also blind, and we all went to college, got master's degrees, have jobs, have families. And my dad said once that he was just happy we were all doing something. So his expectation for us was to grow up and do something. And I think that's a great expectation to have. In terms of giving O's, help your families understand the importance of giving opportunities, opportunities for problem solving, opportunities to try, opportunities to succeed, to fail, to try again, and to transfer skills. So opportunities to problem solve, a lot of times families will naturally jump in to save the day if it looks like the child's going to have any type of struggle. And although that's admirable, it can have some detrimental effects too, because then the child becomes dependent on that. And then they never learn how to problem solve. So for example, if the child's putting away clothing and the drawer's not going to close because half of the shirt is hanging out, the parent or the caregiver or family member may jump in and wait, let me fix it. But what did the child learn from that? If the child tries to shut the drawer and it doesn't close, they can help them figure it out why and what to do so it'll close next time. Opportunities to try. Sometimes people may not give the child an opportunity because they're not sure if someone with vision impairment can do it. They may fear about safety. Opportunities to succeed, but also to fail. Again, families jump in. Nobody likes to see someone else fail, and we don't want to set them up for failure. But there's a lot you can learn whenever things don't quite go the way that was expected. And then the most important part, too, is to give them opportunities to try again. And we see this even with adults, that sometimes if the person tries, is not successful, then the family decides, oh, no, you're never going to, we'll just do that. You're not able to do it. We'll just take over that from here on out. And they never give the opportunity again. The opportunity to transfer skills is also important, and that's to transfer skills from one setting to another or with different objects. I worked with a young adult who had a lot of anxiety. He was really worried. He was going to be going to a residential vision rehabilitation center for some additional training after high school, and he wanted to know what he could do with his clothes because he had no idea where to put them, since the dressers where at the agency he was going to would not be like the dressers he had at home. And he had no idea how to organize them in a different type of dresser or container.
Hand under hand, for example. In this picture in front of you, you see that a mother has her hands underneath her young daughter, and they are tapping the bottom of a box with the left hand, or with the right hand, and the bottom of a plastic bowl with the left hand. The dad is helping out by holding the daughter upright. And so I wanted to point out this specific instructional strategy because it is empowering in that it enables the learner the power to control the activity instead of me as the teacher holding onto the child's hand and making them touch whatever the activity is. Instead, my hands would be underneath the students, okay? And so the student could take off their hands off of mine. They have a choice to participate. When you have a choice to participate, then it's respectful. And it enables you to actually learn because you're an active participant when you do choose to participate. It's also reassuring because if I am reaching out and touching things first, then the child doesn't have to touch things unknown, right? And if I touch things first, then the child can build trust that I wouldn't take or cause that child to experience something negative, squishy, icky, right? It could be a myriad of things, or to demand something of them that they don't even know what you're asking them to do if they have no experience of completing that activity. So an example could be just making cookies. Well, instead, you would be the person stirring the cookie dough, but the student would have their hands on top of yours so that they would learn that motion of stirring. So while they have their hands on yours, they're actually learning how much pressure it takes to hold the spoon and move it through the cookie dough, for example. It enables them, learners, to participate to the degree that they are comfortable. So it increases feelings of security as well and confidence. And as the student learns the activity, learns what is being expected and how to perform it, then you just move your hands out from under theirs and until they don't need you anymore. Okay, little bits at a time, move it away. And it creates a sense of positive touch. So many of our children have had, months in the NICU, lots of surgeries, etc. And all of that has created a situation in their experience of negative touch. Their memory is every time somebody touches me, it hurts. So instead, this creates a way for them to relate positively to other humans. And that in turn strengthens their trust and confidence in other people beyond their immediate family. That will last their whole lives and help them build positive relationships well into their future.
So next, we'd like to talk about some environmental considerations. Reducing clutter is so important. So from a visual standpoint, and I would say tactual as well, you want to reduce clutter in the surrounding area. So for example, if there are cubby holes with all kinds of items, you may put a solid colored curtain in front of them just to cut down on some of the busyness of that area of the room. You also want to think about reducing clutter at hand. So what's within the reach of the child when they're sitting at the table ready to eat or ready to do a craft activity, just reducing the amount of stuff in that area, right? Clearing the space. Space is a very good thing. It should be your friend and you should use it. It's going to help define areas and make those areas easier to see visually. But it also gives more room to move. It's better for safety. And so whenever you're thinking about reducing clutter, it really is about safety and accessibility. I know you can also reduce clutter auditorily. And so Tony, I'll jump in, but you feel free to share as well. I know you want to cut down on noise. You want to share a little bit more with us about that?
Sure, you want to decrease the noise in the classrooms for sure. That's one of our noisiest environments we encounter. And so doing things just by simply like taking tennis balls, cutting them open and sticking the tennis balls on the bottom of the chair legs decreases noise. Of course, you could also soften the noise bouncing off the walls by putting up soft curtains or cork board or bulletin board, etc. It helps decrease the noise in the environment. But some teachers, I have come into their classrooms and they'll be playing music in the background at the same time of trying to provide instruction. So we want to eliminate that. And these considerations for reducing clutter are also good for the home. If you want your child at home to focus on an activity, then let's make sure all those things are reduced clutter-wise, like make sure the area is clear, etc. All the things Jennifer just talked about, but eliminate the background noise as well so that the child can focus. Communication, we want to keep it simple and succinct. We don't want to have a lot of talking going on, like me having one conversation while I'm providing instruction. So I call that a KISS. And we want to socialize elsewhere, not in the environment where we're providing instruction. Rather, save all the discussions about the weekend or what happened last night at the, open house at school. Save all that for a different time.
So lighting matters. And actually, when working with people with vision impairment, the three big things to keep in mind are lighting, glare, and contrast. And so you definitely want to get to know and understand the needs of the children or your students in terms of lighting. Some may need additional lighting to see better, while others may be very sensitive to too much light. And so it's good to make sure that you understand and know what's preferable. In some cases, having a spotlight or what we call a task light on the task can be very helpful. You can use a adjustable gooseneck desk lamp or floor lamp to help with this. And you always want to try to cut down on glare. Now, glare can come from many sources. A shining desk or table could be covered with a tablecloth or a towel to cut down on glare. But even if the child may, if they're sitting by a window where there's glare in a certain area, you can close the blinds or the shades. And maybe you just do it at certain times of the day. It's not all the time. If they're in a classroom, maybe have their them be seated so that they're not facing directly into the sun, the bright sun. And then you want to use high contrast items. So a distinct difference between the object and the environment around it. Toys, balls that are of high contrast are going to be really helpful, easier to see. I remember when we'd go miniature golfing, always trying to find the ball that was going to be the easiest to see against the putting green and everything. And even when I was in, what we called gym classes back then, the teacher would always make sure to use brightly colored balls. When I was up at kickball and things like that. So that can be really important. And contrast can make a huge difference in so many ways. It can be used around the home as well as in school. So now moving on to some family-centered practice. It's really important to develop a sense of trust with families. We've talked a little bit about trust along the way in terms of developing that trust with the child and the family too. And so some things that will help with this as a professional are to listen, listen, listen. So you want to listen to what the family's saying. They're going to give you valuable information about how the child is performing, what went well, what didn't go well. But also listen to find out what motivates the child, the family, as they're providing help. Get to know the family by listening. And also, sometimes you may even have to listen. I say have to. It's a wonderful thing to be able to listen to families as just that, a listening ear. They may need somebody to just vent to. And so you can be a listening ear as well. Don't judge. We all have different values, different preferences. And sometimes if families aren't maybe have a different set of values and preferences that aren't living up to our values or adhering to them, we might be tempted to judge. And even as professionals, come across as all-knowing and judgmental because we've had all this training and we know what's best for this child and what you should do as a family member. But you really want to resist the urge to be judgmental. You want to make the family comfortable and safe, not only in the physical environment, but in working with you. Comfortable to ask questions if they don't understand. Comfortable and safe to make a mistake in front of you, again, without being judged because of it. And you want to ask their opinion before sharing yours. Get them involved.
That's great, Jennifer, because involving families and caretakers, they can actually be your number one supporter for what you are trying to teach their child. And you can enlist their support by asking for their help, just even in deciding what to work on. If you keep it to 1 or 2 items, then you show them through coaching and modeling how to accomplish the goal that you both have. And then once you've established the relationship with them, keep encouraging them and checking in to see how they're doing with what you both decided to work on, and modify it as you need to along the way.
I was just reading something this morning about adjustment to blindness. And according to a gentleman named Ken Moses, he was a parent of a child with a disability, and he talked about the fact that parents go through this grieving process when their child is diagnosed with a disability, and in this case, blindness, and how professionals can be supportive. And he suggested that they need empathy, non-judgment, unconditional acceptance, and to focus on their feelings.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Next, we want to talk about collaboration with professionals. And it is so helpful and beneficial to have a team approach. And when you think about the possible team members, or think about the people you're inviting to the table, right? Or who should be invited to the table. Families and caregivers are so important. Sometimes overlooked, but often the most important, right? Other related services, so physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech and language path, the many other related service providers. A certified teacher of the visually impaired, a certified orientation and mobility instructor, a certified teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, an intervener, and the state deafblind project staff. These can all be valuable members of the team. So let's just get a closer look at a couple of them. So a teacher of the blind and visually impaired is someone who has special knowledge about blindness and visual impairment, the etiologies, the educational implications. They understand about adaptive techniques and instructional strategies, special equipment and devices. They know how to do assessments. A lot of standardized assessments wouldn't be appropriate for someone who's not able to see the pictures that are part of the assessment, or be able to do some of the more visual tasks that are a part of so many assessments. And so teachers of the visually impaired, are aware of and able to conduct assessments with adaptations accordingly. They assist with teaching concept development and the expanded core curriculum. And the expanded core curriculum is it involves concept development and instruction in areas to supplement what the child may be missing through incidental learning. And just briefly, there are 9 areas, including assistive technology, career exploration, compensatory skills, independent living, orientation and mobility, recreation and leisure, self-determination, sensory sensory integration and experiences, and then also social skill development. So, and these again supplement the core curriculum that is taught in schools, but the expanded core curriculum is really important for children from birth on. And I should say too that teachers of the visually impaired don't just work in the school setting, they do work with families in their homes as well. Orientation and mobility specialists are the next professionals to talk about. And they've been recognized by IDEA since 2004 as a related service. And orientation and mobility instructors teach travel skills to help enable the child or student to develop the skills to orient and travel safely in their environments at home, at school, and in the community. Tony, I think you've got some other professionals to tell us about.
Right, Jennifer, thank you. Teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing, we want to just compare and think about what you said about teachers of the visually impaired. Teachers of the deaf are also specifically trained to support students who have hearing loss. And so similar types of areas that they're trained in, they have knowledge about hearing impairments, about the causes and educational impacts of hearing loss, but they also have been trained in instructional strategies, specialized equipment, and assessments, just like you were talking about. But they also are highly trained related to communication, language, and concept development. They may also, well, they will also be trained in how to teach reading and writing in English, as well as be proficient. It might even be required that they're proficient in how to use sign language, American Sign Language, and to have awareness and knowledge of deaf culture. They are also, there is an expanded core curriculum for the deaf and hard of hearing as well. And those 9 areas include audiology, career education, communication, family education, functional skills for education success, self-determination and advocacy, social emotional skills, and technology. So it's very similar, you know, type of training as teachers of the visually impaired, but uniquely about deafness and hearing loss. Another new profession in our country is the profession of being an intervener. Typically, these individuals have been hired originally as a paraeducator in the classroom, or they might have been the sign language interpreter hired, but they take special time and training and learn about deafblindness and how to provide good instruction, how to provide access to the environment and academic content while the students are at school. They work consistently with the individual. They do with, not for. They provide a bridge to the world through provision of the information, enabling the student to know what's going on around them auditorily and visually. An example of what I mean by that is an intervener and a student might walk into a cafeteria. Well, the first thing an intervener might do is to inform the student where that student's friends are sitting. And then the student can make their own choice about, do I want to go join my friends, or do I want to, go get in line and get my own tray first, my lunch tray first. The interveners also support the teachers and the team by knowing how to adapt materials, modify, or convey information best for the student to learn. Since they are part of that team, they attend all of the team meetings as well, so that they can provide their valuable insight that they have about their unique student. They help the student gather information, learn concepts, develop communication and language, establish relationships, make friends, advocate for themselves as they go about their day. The interveners also are trained in the student's unique communication modality, and so provide all those opportunities for the student to participate not only in learning, but in all those social situations while at school. So I want to just share with you a little bit more now about the Hearing and Vision Project. You can get in touch with us. There's a QR code on the slide. It'll take you right to our website. And just a little bit about the grant is that we are funded every 5 years. So this month is the very first month of the next 5-year cycle that we're in. And the nice thing is that we can start to work with families and service providers as soon as a child is identified to us when they are born, all the way up until the child is 21 years old. And children are constantly referred to us in between birth to 21 as well. But we are the only service provider through this grant that can remain a constant in the family's, in the child's life until they leave education services and move into the adult service world. And that helps the families greatly, because when a child changes teachers, the family constantly is called to re-educate the new teacher or new personnel, any new personnel. And so this service through what's called the Deafblind Project grants, otherwise known as Mississippi Hearing Vision Project in Mississippi, we can provide that additional support as all those transitions occur in a child's life. Jennifer and Kendra, we also are charged with on this grant systems change activities, and that is to increase, more efficient services and better awareness, recognition of the needs of children who are deafblind and the needs of their families. We also maintain a child count and report annually regarding that. So we have a registry of children, and then we provide all the training that any adult might need who is engaged in the education of a child having both vision and hearing loss. You can contact us. I have my cell phone number on the slide along with my email address and a QR code, so you can just quickly download the entire contact. And Jennifer and Kendra, I'm going to turn it over to you again.
And just to clarify, the deafblind projects are available throughout the country, right? Not just in Mississippi.
Oh, yes, that's absolutely right. Since they're federally funded under our Office of Special Education Programs. Yes, thank you.
So the National Research and Training Center on Blindness and Low Vision we do research related to employment for people who are blind. One of our recent projects, we developed an app for families, and we believe that transition and preparing for employment starts early in life. So the app is for families of students who are between the ages of 4 and 24. The app is called 4, the number 4, the word 2, T-O, and then the number 24. The 4 to 24 app provides information for families on how to provide experiences to their students who are blind or deaf-blind in different aspects of their life that help them to develop the concepts and fill in the gaps of some of that incidental learning that they may be missing out on. The app is completely free, and it was developed under our research grant. We have a lot of other courses and free resources available. Everything is free of charge. You can come and see it on our websites, and you will see our website, blind.msstate.edu, as well as our ntac.blind.msstate.edu. You can reach out to us. We're here on the Mississippi State University campus and happy to chat with you if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you.